7. Crime, perversion, and violence. There is a wave of crime all over the world that is on the increase and reaching unpredictable, catastrophic proportions. It is a condition that requires deep and careful study by all honest and enlightened men. It explodes unexpectedly here and there as if an invasion of pestilence and madness descended upon the minds, especially the minds of inexperienced youth. Many experts, among them sociologists, educators, psychologists, and religious men, have shown their concern about the steady increase of crime, especially that involving cruelty and violence. They have researched to the best of their ability, only to come up with half solutions, improvisations, and suggestions, which work one day and fail the next. The situation continues unaltered, if not worse and of greater concern. Thousands of years of culture and civilization do not seem to have improved man's behavior. Intoxicated by the desire for violence, he adopted strange philosophies of life, and seeking to assert himself through vandalism and obscenity, he is trying to move downward to his former origins. Some try to explain superficially this socio-moral situation of crime and violence as resulting from the battlefields of the dirty and cruel wars that were recently fought. They claim that modern technology, in the need to alleviate overdeveloped nations from the excess of armaments and outmoded military equipment, has created centers of conflict within the newly established nations. Some of these nations, still in early development, were sacrificed and utterly destroyed, becoming victims of alien interests who arbitrarily dominated them. Although only for a short time, mankind, of course, will have to answer for its heavy debt, a debt to be recognized as the fruit of egotistic and unrepentant men and governments, generators of such disgrace and ills. He who is conditioned to the mad technology of killing and savage destruction continually entertains fear and feelings of insecurity, urging him to kill first and examine later, so he can preserve himself. This puts him in a crucial situation, making him turn to drugs, which stimulate his sensations and debase his feelings. It is then very difficult for him to find himself again, even after leaving the battlefield and returning to peaceful and orderly communities. The simple signing of a peace treaty, away from the war zones where people, ideals, and dignity are destroyed, cannot, all of a sudden, change a veteran into a peaceful citizen. Besides this fact, experts also mention social injustices. They refer to the classes of underpaid manual labor, the unemployed, the undernourished, and the abandoned, who become dwellers of shanty towns and ghettos, and turn to adventure by operating in bands. Their painful economic condition results in a deplorable environment, which becomes the breeding ground of both physical and psychological diseases of difficult or unknown diagnosis. Hatred, brutality, and cruelty there abound. Sentiments are disrupted and replaced by emotional coldness, the offspring of paranoiac schizophrenia. All this is a symptom of rebellion against an indifferent society that has abandoned them to a primitive, subhuman stage. At times some descendants survive as victims of their environment. They bring over deep-seated habits and vices of difficult treatment and of disturbing consequences, of which they cannot rid themselves and which will cause them to deteriorate further later on. Besides the views of specialists about this complex problem, we must consider the moral conditions of well-to-do families, for there is also a frightening surge of crime in an environment that is regarded as socially reformed. Here we find examples not always praiseworthy, where important duties are delegated to paid servants and educators. Parents disrespect each other, have little regard for laws and customs, and impose their whims and improprieties as acceptable and convenient norms, thus acting in a despicable way, under the cloak of respectability, also contributing in large degree to criminality and violence are immature educators, morally unprepared for the proper formation of mind and character of youth. Experiments carried out with mice have demonstrated that excessive crowding in a limited area causes them to become violent. Such symptoms appear after they have gone through periods of great voracity and were sexually exhausted. They develop dangerous and aggressive dispositions, becoming indifferent to any other faculties or instincts. Based on this test, experts believe that the problem is of similar nature with humans, that crime is much higher in congested urban environments and worsening every day. All this shows that the implications of moral and religious ethics of the past have failed. After the restrictive banning of all evolutionary processes, there came the need of modernization for survival's sake. As a result, there was a leap from unjustified prohibitions to an accommodation to false new values, without proof of their quality. The total permissiveness allowed by some apprehensive religious leaders, as a temporary test, has concurred to increase the lack of decency. Thus the gospel themes were adjusted to a vulgar level in inexcusable service to the demands of passions. However, criminal sometimes suffers from inner or outer disturbances which drive or predispose him to violence that manifests alongside the other economic and environmental factors. There is no doubt that hereditary endocrine malfunctions and psychic dissonance become a strong factor of insanity and crime. Often traumas and repressions that belong to the spirit himself are destructive complexes of the personality. They drive their victim to the underground of emotional turmoil and onto systematic rebellion. The one afflicted by them tries to survive, but often goes insane from the lack of renovation and from the poisoning effect of psychic and miasmatic fluids that he cultivates. Besides this, physical derangements, sundry illnesses, and the traumatic effects of past failures all contribute to a lack of discernment, resulting in outbreaks of his violence and aggressiveness. In the complex mechanism of rebirth and evolution, we should also consider the masses of primitive spirits who are plunging into physical instruments in search of progress. However, not finding help and stimulation to noble aims, they are attracted to gross sensations, wherein they perambulate. They begin to demonstrate aggressiveness and violent instincts, by which they want to prevail and enjoy the pleasures that deplete and destroy them. Their philosophy is to live one day. ******1 fluids, in spiritist terminology, the vibratory emanations that affect the invisible environment. Translators note, intensely, rather than make an effort towards the days ahead too. The mere concern of those interested in this problem, and this refers to all of us, is not by itself sufficient to solve it. Practical means are urgently needed, based on widespread educational effort, before an eruption of more serious and dangerous problems takes place. Otherwise, the cities will become large stages of ever-increasing violence, crime, and related problems. The measures used so far to suppress crime did not aim at the causes that have nurtured its proliferation. It does seem easier to resort to suppressive means, but they are useless and may become another factor in producing more violence. Treatment of such an urgent problem has to be of a preventive nature. Adults must seek to fill themselves with a great deal of love from the abundant fountain of Jesus' doctrine. By mobilizing their resources, they will then be able to educate the new generations and give them a healthy atmosphere conducive to psychological recuperation and human progress. Giving value to life and having respect for life will guide parents, teachers, educators, religious men, and psychologists to achieve reciprocal and brotherly understanding with harmonious and methodical objectives, which are examples that can touch the souls of youth and safely lead them to better ways. *****2 in the chapter, Mental Diseases and Possession, we will deal with the problem of possession and its part in crime, perversion, and violence. A note by the spiritual author. After man becomes spiritually renewed and educated, He begins his campaign against the blemishes of social injustice. He works for the removal of causes that breed poverty, depressive environments, pride, egotism, and indifference. Those who are violent, or carry psychological problems, will then be loved and cared for by a more human medical practice, one that is not concerned with mere profit and recognition. As we know, many professionals do degrade themselves with the intent of obtaining fame and power. He who is illumined by the Christian flame becomes aware of the survival of his spirit. He understands his soul's existence before the cradle, in that he is the heir of himself. This will cause in him a change, and he will cease to be affected by his community's trend of thinking, who will then receive from him substantial benefits. People are the expression of their deeds. Society is the result of the people that form it. Human life is made up of the spirits that populate it. Jesus, the unique psychologist, whose views have challenged the centuries, said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you," meaning that man must direct his heart to the spiritual homeland, the true land, that by doing so, all problems of real importance will be solved as a natural result of the greater spirituality he will have acquired. We are all responsible for and should not turn our back to the problems of crime, perversion, and violence, these remnants of animal nature in man who struggles to be good, to free himself from the shackles of primitiveness in order to attain his spiritual nature. Every gesture of love and patience, every gift of light and knowledge we give are valuable offerings to that future of peace, and happiness we long to have. On Sunday's new chapter of the work, contribute by making donations with the publishing of works in the English language. Subscribe to our networks at Casa de Reading KO YouTube and Facebook.